In today's episode of Anish Thing, I spoke with Sangeetha Aiyer about the advantages of a animal-based diet. Now, this episode is definitely going to be polarizing. There'll be opinions on all camps, and of course, please write in with all your views. But my idea here is to poke holes at every sort of diet. And ultimately, it's not only about weight loss, but it's also about mental clarity, not having mental fog, and 10 other aspects that a lot of people forget while discussing diets. So, this is going to be one of the first episodes on a recurring episode theme on diets, and we'll get to it. Welcome to the show, Sangeetha. Good to have you.
Thank you so much, Anish.
So, I think today it's going to be some things are going to ruffle a few feathers for sure.
A lot of feathers.
But before we get into the animal based diet, let's get to know a little bit about your journey.
Okay. I'll try and keep it short. It's been a long journey. I'm born raised a vegetarian. That's the family I'm born in, culture I'm born in. I'm a South Indian. I was not that eggs, etc. Eggs were not shunned in my house specifically, but as luck would have it, I have a grade 5 congenital allergy to eggs.
Okay.
So I was completely a vegetarian with not even eggs that I couldn't eat. Fairly sporty kid. I was a tomboy. So that's just to say that I ran around and I did a lot of sports and all of that. Fast forward quickly to puberty, and then beyond that, my early 20s, I started to gain weight. Um, I just resigned to the fact that, okay, these are South Indian genes. You know, people tell you all these things. South Indians are voluptuous and things like that. I was like, no, I'm pleasantly plump, blah, blah, blah.
Healthy, as
Healthy.
Punjabis would say.
Exactly. Khate pite ghar ke, as Punjabis would say. And so I was also called a lot of nicknames, as people would those days. It's suddenly offensive now. Not that any of that kind of left any, scathing whatever thing on my head. But, as a woman, as a young girl, you, for many reasons and primarily vanity, you want to look a certain way and you want to be a certain way. Anyway, all that was going on, early 20s. I got married really early. And quickly, within 2 years into my marriage, I'd gained a lot of weight, and then I was diagnosed with PCOS, polycysterian ovarian syndrome. Now, in those days, if you had something like this, you just went to the doctor. The doctor said, yes, it's very common. They'll give you a birth control pill. They'll put you on metformin, which I didn't know anything about. And then I said, okay, it's PCOS. I'll take it. I didn't have a lot of trouble conceiving. And further on, I also kind of dropped the medication because I had my son and I didn't see a point, and I'm terrible with medication. But my weight gain continued. I had my baby, all of that happened. And very quickly, within 1 year of my son being born, I was doing some blood work, and I saw that I was diagnosed pre-diabetic. And also at that point, I was probably 88 kgs, like massively
How
obese.
long back was that?
2007, 8, that back. And so now my health concerns, along with the fact that, hey, this is not just a vanity issue. This is not just about losing weight, looking good, losing pregnancy weight. It's not all about that. It's progressing into something a little more serious, where as young as 29, if you're pre-diabetic, that's really serious, right? And then I went the whole 9 yards. The person that I am, I counted calories, went on every probable diet. Trust me, if there's a diet, GM diet, juicing diet, eat 8 meals a day diet, I have done it all. I have run kilometers on the treadmill. And it's not like I did not lose weight, okay? I did lose weight, but anybody who's tried to battle weight loss will understand this, that there is a whole process of yo-yoing that happens, right? You keep your eye on it, and like a hawk, if your eye is on it and you're going about doing those cardio workouts and all of that, the minute you take your eye off it, it's all back. Now, I'm not a professional sports person. I mean, I have a regular job, I have a family, I have a career. I did this from when I was 28, 29 till about 34, 35, and lost 8 kgs, gained 6 kgs, lost 5 kgs. And I was like, there has to be a simpler way of doing this. What is it that I'm missing? And I'm a huge, thanks to all this background, a huge research junkie on nutrition and weight loss. That's, I think, one thing I have done. And somewhere around 2014 is when I stumbled upon a paper that spoke about the ketogenic lifestyle. I didn't know what it was. The lifestyle very clearly said that it was a therapeutic lifestyle for a person with a medical condition. But when I started reading that and delving deeper into that, I realized that it's also one of the ways to kind of lose weight and get your metabolic health back. It was completely contrarian to what mainstream said.
Absolutely.
Right? I by then was a kind of, I call myself a closet meat eater. Like, once in a week, go eat some chicken with a friend, more gravy than the chicken, because we all progress like that, right? Vegetarians. And then this way of eating said it. The one thing I liked about the entire ketogenic way, or what I read about it and what I delved deeper, is that it did not say that it is a diet. It is a lifestyle. You do it for life, and there are certain benefits, and there's certain flexibility around it. So I, in 2014, did that, and I saw massive changes in not just weight loss, right? My plateau fat loss, right? And then any remnants of the PCOS condition, which the cyst was there in varying sizes, that was gone. Span of 6 months. I had reached, I had come under 60 kgs, a weight I have not been since I was 14 years old. My relationship with food had changed. I started understanding for the first time what it is to not be thinking of food all the time, planning your next meal, worrying if the quantity is right. All of this kind of completely changed. And again, 2015, when I found fasting, and of course, these things are now well known: intermittent fasting, a low carb diet, a ketogenic diet. But way back in 2014-15, one of the earliest people, I think, because people would also wonder, what am I doing? They called it the cholesterol diet. They said, you're going to have a heart failure, you're going to lose your kidney function. This is not right for you. But I just saw my health markers improve. And from there on, it's been 8.5 years now. I have been on some spectrum of a largely animal-based diet, and where I keep my carbs in control.
I think
That's
for
the
me,
story.
a couple of things you've said, right? First is, a lot of these things work when it becomes a lifestyle, not a temporary
Correct.
sort of a fix. Intermittent fasting is one great example of that, and we've done an episode on that. And both Ashton and I, who's my guest on that episode, both of us started this 7-8 years back. And that time, if you were fasting, it was like, is this for religious purposes? Are you okay?
Correct.
No one looked at it from a fitness point of view, but thankfully that's changed. But
Or funny, they would say that, oh, if you're not eating, obviously you'll lose weight.
yeah,
It was always connected to weight, but there are so many other reasons
yeah,
you
and
fast.
and this whole thing of weight loss, right? It's not about weight loss. It's about fat loss, and it's also about how you feel and how strong you feel.
Exactly.
You could be losing a lot of weight, which could be water weight, which could be muscle mass, and you could be feeling
Absolutely.
miserable about yourself, but you could be thinner. Uh, let's get into the animal-based diet thing, and I want to go by uh, your experience, maybe some literature, and in the overall conversation, some things I want to be very clear about that we're not getting into the morality of things.
100%.
I don't want to get into this conversation that how ethical it is to kill animals. This is not that sort of a debate. And I definitely don't want to get into anything which is
Religious, if you have a...
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The morality is not the question here.
Correct.
We want to go more by the scientific and factual aspects here rather than
Absolutely.
the morality aspects, because those I don't know how anyone can defend those, or there'll always be arguments to that.
Correct. Yeah, personal beliefs, morality, all of that aside, let's look at the human body,
Yeah.
the biochemistry, the biology, some scientific facts,
Yeah.
and we'll stick to that. Absolutely.
How do you even define an animal-based diet? Is it predominantly your nutrients coming from
That's
animals?
precisely the definition of animal-based diets. Huge amount of nuancing possible, person to person, obviously, depending upon your metabolic health, all of that. But an animal-based diet is where a large portion of your caloric intake over a period of time or in a day comes from animal-based foods. Now, what are animal-based foods? Somehow, the minute we mention animal-based foods, everybody thinks red meat. Okay, but the spectrum.
I actually thought of red meat right away. Nice
Exactly.
steak came to mind.
Right, but the spectrum of animal-based foods is very wide. Okay, sure, it's meat, all forms of meat. There is poultry, there is seafood, there is dairy, and there is eggs. Okay, so to all my dear vegetarians in India, the one reason we are saved by being vegetarian is because we have large amounts of doodh, dahi, paneer, curd in our diet.
How's that
And all
vegetarian? That always blows my mind.
how is that exactly? Those all come from an animal and they have the right kind of nutrients that is needed for a human being. Okay. Now, the question is there's a lot of confusion saying, I don't know where this comes from that India is largely a vegetarian population. I think this has been, and there are certain interesting things I have studied to know where this perception comes from. But let's forget ethnicity. Let's forget region. Let's forget which part of the globe from wherever you are from. The fact is we are Homo sapiens sapien. That's a certain species, right? If our DNA, no matter where we come from, has not changed in about 2.5 to 3 million years, okay? Whether you're a Caucasian, whether you're an African American, whether you're an Indian, whether you're a Southeast Asian, whoever you are, the genetic variance in our DNA is extremely narrow, which means that it may present itself in differences such as skin color, hair, eyes, but what's good for you as a human being, as that species for nutrition, is agnostic to all of this, right? We are omnivores. We've always been omnivores. The plant or the agriculture revolution is anywhere from 8,000 to 12,000 years. But the human beings, when I say ancestral nutrition, and that's a blip in evolution.
Yeah.
When you talk of 2.5, 3 million years, you were largely meat eaters. And seasonally, okay, when you, because you did not find food every day, when you had periods of winter, etc., when there was no food, you ate tubers, edible fungi, fruits were considered like a gift of nature because you didn't get it all year round. That's from an evolutionary standpoint. If you look at human biology and our anatomy, everything in your body, let's begin with your stomach acidity, it's as close to a carnivore as possible. Our stomach acidity is so powerful that it is designed to digest nutrient-dense foods and not volume-dense foods.
What about that whole aspect of our teeth not being for meat eating and stuff?
No, we do have canines. Our teeth is in fact, if you look at the Greek history, and there is a lot of Paleolithic evidence on this. The Greeks were the ones who had a lot of wheat in their diet, and I'm not making this up. I can share some links. Now, if you look at the mummies had the worst kind of tooth decay in the Greeks more than anybody else, than meat eaters. So if you're a meat eater, your tooth decay and your dental health is of paramount, it will be in paramount health, right? So the second part is your biology. Third is that there is no nutrient that a plant can offer, you can look it up, that animal-based foods don't offer. And there is a reason why nature is designed you to be that way as that species, right? Name a single micro or a macronutrient or a vitamin or a mineral that is not present in meat, but only a plant has to offer and you can eat it. It doesn't exist, right? If you eat the whole range of animal-based food. Finally, you can choose to eat anything you want to, but by definition, if your way of eating requires you to supplement more and more and more, I consider that, let me not use the word inferior, people get very upset, it's a suboptimal diet, which is why a vegan diet needs so much supplementation. And in my practice, every vegetarian is deficient in zinc, iron, vitamin D3, B12, out of which heme iron, vitamin D3, B12, all come from animal-based foods.
Even if you're supplementing?
You will
Or-
need to supplement
Yeah,
continuously. Yes. So,
suboptimal is a very politically correct way of putting it, I think.
yeah, it's an inferior diet. I will just say it then. Yeah.
Uh, to me, one of the things as someone who works out, right, creatine is something that is important
100%.
to me.
Same here.
And I only later found out that vegetarian food does not contain creatine.
Creatine, taurine, DHA, which is a very important omega-3 fatty acid. Veg food doesn't have even these.
Okay, so animal-based diet is then defined as a diet where predominantly majority of your calories or nutrients are coming from
Yes.
animals. What are the advantages of this, right? You're talking about nutrition and superfood kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Let's go a little deeper into these kind of aspects, the advantages that for you at least are pretty clear.
See, I think one of the direct advantages of animal-based foods is you do not have to plan too much to get your protein intake. Okay. Now let's be clear. There is something called as protein as is available in grams in a certain food, and protein as is bioavailable, as in absorbable by your body. Okay. Every time I hear but dal has protein, I want to bang my head. Okay, dal has that, or they say dal is protein.
Yeah,
Lentils.
dal is protein. We spoke about this. So my
Yeah.
producer Saurabh, he's vegetarian. We just spoke about this before
Yeah.
the recording started.
Dal has some protein. It has an incomplete protein profile. Okay, so no vegetarian food comes with all 9 amino acids, barring soy, and that's a different discussion. We'll get there soon. So number one is amino acids and free fatty acids that come from animal-based foods, which are saturated fat, and your entire profile of 9 amino acids in terms of, because these are the essential macronutrients are protein and fat, not carbohydrates. So these are something that you get very easily and in a more absorbable manner from animal-based foods. Number one. When we start looking. Number two is you will start realizing that satiety levels are higher. And I want to again preface this by saying satiety is not the feeling that we think satiety is. It's not that feeling of your stomach being extremely full, distended, and you burping, right? By then, that is actually a sign of overeating. Okay, satiety is when leptin, the hormone, kicks in very naturally, even before this voluminous feeling reaches to say that, hey, I'm full. That happens with nutrient density, and that is more powerful on an animal-based diet, right? That's number two. Number three, I think your efficiency, focus, performance in a sport, and I can cite so many examples, and I just recently tweeted about Sky's diet, right? Surya Kumar Yadav's diet came out in...
What Sky's diet?
Low carb,
Low carb,
animal-based food, largely coming from meat, eggs, seafood, nuts, and controlling carbs as an athlete, right? So enhanced, and performance is not just for like Sky, or it's not for a power lifter, or it's not for you or just me who goes to the gym 3x and who's trying to lift better. Performance is everyday performance, right? How focused you are able to be, say for 3 hours at a go if you're working on a presentation, or if you're crunching some numbers. Do you have brain fog? Is your energy levels high? All these get enhanced on an animal-based nutrition directly or indirectly, because when a large portion of your food comes from nutrient-dense foods like animal-based foods, then your body does not crave what I call junk nutrition, which is carbohydrates and sugar, which you otherwise will fill up your plate with. And that's why you have that post-noon lethargy, that need to reach out for a hot cup of coffee. I feel like napping after a lunch. This is all
Of course, you have Rajma Chawal, you're passing out after that.
100%. This whole Sunday big meal, like chole bhature brunch, you will pass out after that. So it's not just about physical nutrition, it's mental agility. It's how fast you're able to think. It's are you Is your focus better? It's all these things, right? So these are the advantages. And then the one of the most practical advantages, you don't have to spend time, hours planning your food. I remember when I was doing 6 meals a day, my family used to tell, do you go to the work to eat or do you go to the work to...
This whole 6 meals, 5 small meals a day, that just gives me anxiety to even think about someone planning it.
Exactly. And I used to remember, I used to go with 6 dabbas to work, and I'd be like, oh, now this is the time for this. And food constantly on your mind, like you don't have anything else to do, right? So I think these are the very, very visible advantages. And eventually, when you add a practice like I'm sure you have, like I have, I'm an intermittent faster since 2017 now. 16 hours is cakewalk for me. Then you have so much more free time in your hand. And then, of course, all the other benefits of fasting and giving your digestion a rest. I want to tell everybody, having your digestion overwork is not a good sign. It's a stressor on the body.
Yeah, you're not supposed to be
You're
eating
not
all the time.
yeah, we human beings are supposed to be in fed and fasted states very often. So these are the big benefits versus versus not being on an animal based diet.
Before I get to brain fog, which I think is a very underrated aspect of any of this, right?
Yes.
Again, to me, weight loss is a very, uh,
So
it's a very small component
I
of all
would
of
agree.
this. But you're just being alert, being more productive is a very underrated
Yes.
thing that people, I think a lot of times that gets ignored. Before I get on to that, so are you saying my Punjabi genes don't put me in an advantage to have chole bhature than anyone else? We're all the same.
No, they don't.
Because we hear that so much, right? That
No.
we are South Indians, we're conditioned to eat rice.
No.
Our bodies are adapted.
No.
We are this, and we can do that. And it's like, no, can you
So
really?
if I may quickly just bring in one lovely aspect here. Have you heard about this lady? She's a doctor, Manoshi Bhattacharya.
No,
Okay.
I have not.
Manoshi Bhattacharya is a physician, and she's been a physician in the defense for a very long time, 22 to 25 years now. But the more interesting aspect about Manoshi Bhattacharya is that she's a food historian from an Indian perspective. See, when we talk about diets, etc., we have a lot of visibility into Icelandic and European. I always used to wonder, but what about the Indian ancestral tree? She has done so much work on this. So and she has studied Indian nutrition to up to 3,000 years. Not your grandfather and grandmother. That's not ancestral, really. Okay. And very interestingly, and she's done a lot of work. She points out that our ancestors, Indian ancestors, whether you're Punjabi, whoever you are, we followed the Mesolithic way of living, where there is frugality involved. Okay, so it is meat, nuts, seeds, vegetables with a lot of fasting. Frugality was the center stone of the Mesolithic way of eating, right? So, which she then whittles down to say how actually Buddhism had meat, okay, but then Indian Buddhists turned to vegetarian diets and they would drink rice starch all day. And that was considered a very lavish lifestyle for a monk, right? To be able to eat so much sugar and starch. And then how certain kings tried to introduce, at that point, Afghanistan and now, of course, Haryana, when they tried to introduce vegetarianism, it failed. And she calls our current diet, and vegetarians are not going to be happy when I say this, she says all our popular Indian cuisines that we are so proud of, chole bhature, idli, dosa, sambar, all of this, it's a famine diet. It came 200 years of Raj when they started taxing meat and animal farms, and in return for that tax they would give you grains. That's how grains became, and the meat and the animal farm and the animal food and the dairy became a thing that only elite could afford.
So this,
Such an interesting sorry
yeah.
peek into.
So this again brings me back to that brain fog thing. My
Sorry, yeah.
question to you then, I was gonna flip it and say that if you're saying that you have more clarity and you're more alert and all of
Yes.
those advantages on an animal based diet, why is it that you may not be so optimized on a vegetarian diet? What are the aspects leading to that? Like for example, is it the farming revolution, agriculture revolution? Like what is it that a vegetarian diet is bringing to your body that is not
Okay.
optimal for you?
Okay, let's define a vegetarian diet. We use the word vegetarian diet very, very freely. Actually, and let's stick to Indians because we here. We are on a grainitarian diet. We actually don't even eat vegetables that much. Just look at, and I say this from 300 consults now that I've done in the last 2 years of practice, and I watch everybody, right? Day in, day out, you're actually not even optimizing on vegetables, which would have some advantage because while vegetables and fruits are also largely carbohydrates, some form of sugar, trace micronutrients, and water, fiber, we don't eat tons of vegetables. The minute we get up in the morning, it is bread, cereal, upma, dosa, poha, dhokla, whichever part of the world, aloo paratha. Lunch is rice, dal, whatever. Then it is fruit, khakra, biscuit, namkeen. I'm not even getting into the ultra processed food variety and junk food. Just look at your diet. Even lentils and vegetables form a very small part of your diet. Our diets are grain based, right? What happens when 75 to 80% of your caloric intake comes from grains? You are a glucose burner, which means you are constantly using glucose for fuel. Every time you ingest a carbohydrate or sugar, and I'm being very lenient here, people don't eat this clean. There is a lot of stuff in between, biscuits and chai and all of that.
Of course.
When you constantly are ingesting some form of sugar or carbohydrate in your diet, your insulin is constantly spiked. When your insulin is spiked and your blood sugar is spiked, that insulin, that glucose spike and fall is the reason you feel hungry every 2 hours. You can't concentrate. The minute that hunger, the glucose spike falls, that brain fog happens, and where you feel like I need to do something. That's sugar playing. When you're an extreme glucose burner, that's the brain fog.
I think the spiking of glucose, this is something I've seen myself scientifically now. Earlier you could feel it, and I've been using the Ultra Human patch now. So I've been tracking a lot of these things very diligently. I want to talk about that, but we'll take a quick break and be back after these messages.
Hi, hello everyone. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Varta Lab, Akash and Naveen are joined by Shubhra Chatterjee, aka History Wali. This one's filled with many delicious food stories, so all the foodies out there make sure to tune in. On A Niche Thing, Anish talks to Svetlana Nordial, Programming Director Asia at Mubi. The duo answers the most asked question right now, what to watch. They give a list of 5 iconic movies worth checking out. On Nankari, Sadaf and Archit host Ishwar Vikas, the co-founder and CEO of Mukunda Foods. The trio discusses revolution in the food space and the introduction of automation in kitchens. On The Habit Coach, Ashton talks to Raju Sajnani, founder of Enhancing Human Potential. They discuss what is leadership and how one can be a positively impactful leader. And on Think Fast, Varun and Suchita discuss WhatsApp allowing one to message oneself, Spotify Wrapped, and more. Once again, don't forget to visit our merch store on ivmpodcasts.com. We have some exciting stuff for you. Follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. If you like our shows, spread the word. Tell your friends and don't forget to rate and review them wherever you're listening to them. You'll also find all our shows on youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week, Kotak Privy League Program and HDFC Mutual Fund. Thank you for making this possible.
Welcome back to A Niche Thing. I've got Sangeetha with me, and we're talking about animal-based diets. What I was saying is that, again, this is my personal experience over the last 6 months that I've had a CGM on throughout. The days that my glucose variability, which ideally should be under 12%, the only time that it really goes havoc, like 15 to 20%, is when my carb intake is just all over the place.
Right.
And now I've realized it, like that whole crash or whatever, I understand it, but it is that the day I'm eating more lean, if I've had enough fats and protein, there's no problem at all.
Right.
In fact, fats have just helped me stabilize blood glucose to quite a decent level.
100%, because it doesn't spike insulin, right?
Yeah.
So the game changer for anybody to understand sugar and what carbs do if they understood the role of insulin, and that's a whole different episode we can do, if you understood the role of insulin, very important hormone, it should spike also, because if it doesn't spike, you don't have life. And you can see that in cases of pancreatic diseases and type 1 diabetes. But the way that one hormone has an effect on your body is immense. And carbs and sugar spike that hormone the most, and then then it's a chain effect of what you do with your body through decades of not eating.
So we're saying predominantly in a Indian vegetarian diet, like you said, a lot of it is grain, right?
Yes.
Majority
Yes.
becomes grain without you even realizing it.
Yes.
What's a way to perhaps improve on that if you just can't eat meat as an option?
Okay. So, brilliant question. And that's where I start with. I say, very simple. Everybody just start changing your plate proportion. Okay. Thankfully, Indians are vegetarians, where dairy is a big part of our diet. We are not vegans, right? We have a rich culture and a cuisine that has a lot of dahi, curd, there's milk, there's paneer. And now we have also, if it's slightly affordable, you have some accessibility to good quality cheese also that's come into India. So number one is change your plate proportion. Carbohydrates, rice or roti, cannot form 50% of that plate. It's very simple. Protein has to form at least 40 to 45% of that plate. Choose protein in nature that comes with fat, because that's how protein comes in nature. Take any protein in nature and it comes like that. An egg, for example, is a perfect combination of protein and fat, 1:1 mass, right? Paneer, which is our very own cottage cheese, is protein and fat, right? Curd or hung curd is protein and fat when you drain away the liquid and you drain away the whey in it, right? So first, change your plate proportion, prioritize the protein. Okay. Now you have, obviously, if you're vegetarian, there are certain sprouts and there are certain lentils and legumes. Are they class 1 proteins? By definition, no. But in having them in a larger quantity, when you pair it with some dairy, is better than just having a large portion of, like, having 5 rotis or rice. First, start with changing that. And even when we serve, if you have noticed, and I notice these things, the first thing that goes on your plate is the rice or the roti. See how you served. Then one dal bowl, and then one chammach of vegetable will come, right? That needs to change completely. So first, some form of dairy, protein, whatever, lentils, legumes, vegetable, then it's the rice or the roti.
Yeah, fair point. Now that I'm just thinking, it's usually the rice will be the most, then comes the dal, then
Yeah.
comes anything on the periphery.
Correct. Also, when you're a vegetarian, you consciously will have to, and if you have any vegetarians in your family, that's the first question. Very consciously, you'll have to plan the protein intake. Because, like I said, the sources of all 9 amino acids available in terms of sources of protein in a vegetarian diet are only that many, right? Sure, beans and lentils and all, but they also come with a lot of carb in it. Now, the other part that people don't like to hear about, but I will talk about it, is all of your legumes, your chole, chana, rajma. They have tons of anti-nutrients. Plants are not as harmless as we think they are.
Yeah, I was wondering when we're going to touch upon
Right?
this. Yeah.
Which is why any plant-based food has to be soaked, fermented, cooked till kingdom comes, so that your body can absorb it. If plants were so harmless and everything green was so good, you would be able to pop in rajma on its own.
I love this whole somehow this image that's been painted that everything green is good,
Pure, good.
and
yeah.
especially if you're juicing it and you just
It's-
less processed and
It's
stuff.
worse. You will so the anti-nutrients that are there in plants are lectins, oxalates, phytates, phytosterol, the other version, right? When you juice the food, okay, especially raw, you're increasing the concentration of these anti-nutrients, and that is why when you drink beetroot juice, it's actually a laxative. or a Loki juice for that
Yeah.
matter. So not a good idea.
What's an anti-nutrition?
Anti-nutrients.
Anti-nutrients.
So, for example, every living creature has been bestowed by nature with some ability to defend itself, right? Animals can run away, they have claws, they can fight back, they have teeth. Everybody has it. Plants are stationary, they can't run away. So, the defense mechanism of plants are these anti-nutrients that basically discourage you from eating them, right? So, plant may want you to eat their fruit because now somebody will say, oh, but then how is fruit being eaten? I'll give you the logic. Plants want you to eat their ripened fruits because when you eat the fruit and you throw away the seed grows into another plant, right? But plants don't want, they themselves have to have a defense mechanism, right? This is the reason why. And therefore, after agriculture came in and after fire was invented, obviously we learned cooking techniques. All these have to be done. Otherwise, you will not digest your food. So, meat, you have to be worried if it is contaminated. Plant, you have to cook, ferment, soak, do many things, various levels of processing to it to make it digestible and to avoid the anti-nutrients.
So speaking of fruits, one is of course this whole. We spoke about this in the sugar podcast that we done.
I
earlier,
saw that too, yeah.
that somehow again this whole thing that all fruits are great. Just have fruits.
Divine
natural.
food.
But pineapple, and I love pineapples. I read this whole thing that when you're eating a pineapple, the pineapple is actually trying to eat you. That's how your tongue is burning.
Correct.
Which is a
Valid.
defense mechanism.
And that's why it comes with that exterior.
Yeah.
Okay. Why? So, for example, suran, yam, when you are peeling it, why are you supposed to apply coconut oil or something and peel it? Because otherwise you get itchy. We have forgotten that there are all these. Having said that, we've made better use of plants. We've found ways to eat it and all of that. But this fruits discussion.
Sorry, before we go to fruits,
Yeah.
even with plants, I'm assuming, and I could be wrong here, but there must be a decent amount of genetic modification or to domesticate stuff, right? For us to be
100%.
For us to be able to consume it in a rather easier manner.
100%. That is how all vegetables are found in all seasons now. Just go back, like the best kind of potatoes, cauliflower, they were all winter fruits, right? Winter vegetables, I'm sorry. Now everything is available all season. So there is enough amount. Vegetables would also look, for lack of a better word, misshaped, not so homogeneous looking, not so shiny. Nothing looked so pretty, right? They came like brinjals and tomatoes. They came in weird shapes and sizes. You had to throw. I remember when we had to pick okra, bindi. We would always, twist the tail of the bindi to see if it is fine. Now, nothing. Everything comes okay. A lot of genetic modification has been done. That's why you find seedless fruits and vegetables. You find abnormal sizes of snake gourd and loki. None of this is healthy.
And even fruits coming to fruits. I don't think a lot of these fruits are meant to be this sweet all the time.
No. Sweets, if you look at, and there is an evolution of fruit, I'll share that link after the podcast. Sweets were supposed to be tart and sour. They were not, like even the banana that you eat today, the grapes. I remember when I was 8, 9, when a batch of grapes would come home, half of them would be sour so that you couldn't eat that entire half a kilo. Now it's all sweet.
Oh yeah.
You never had seedless variety of anything. I was shocked to see a seedless papaya. Now seedless grapes, there's
Wait,
seedless
there's a
papaya.
seedless papaya?
Oh yes, there is seedless papaya. There is seedless papaya. So all your fruits have been genetically modified to kind of sweeten it more, make it more palatable, make it mass production. And this is also, look at the population. You have to make all of this available for all of us. But in the bargain, you've lost the quality of what fruit and vegetables used to be, which is why even in the animal-based diets, or when we follow that lifestyle, we say stick to citrus fruits, berries. Those have not been bastardized yet, at least.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Well, in India, we have a whole grape varietal called Thompson seedless. It's in the
Yeah.
name, seedless. Coming back to the animal-based diet, if I'm already on an animal-based diet, that means I'm a non-vegetarian, or I'm someone who perhaps might want to get into it. What's a good way to make sure that your diet there is also optimized? Because I'm sure it's not that you're just eating anything anytime, or there must be some rationale to that also.
So let's make some assumptions here that you're a non-vegetarian or you're a meat eater. Okay. One of the best ways to optimize. So there are three simple pillars to this. Okay. Prioritize protein, satiate with healthy fat, control carbohydrates, and remove sugars. 4. Okay. We had to add the last one because there is sugar everywhere.
There's sugar
So
everywhere. True.
yeah, everywhere. So when we say now prioritize protein, very simple. How much protein you should have, right? Simple nuance: 1 gram of protein per desired kg of body weight. This is bare minimum. Now, depending upon who you are, how much you're lifting, what's your activity level. I, for example, take almost 2.2 grams. It's a lot of protein.
I have to do 1.8.
Huh. So exactly. So there is a lot of nuance there, but this is bare minimum because this will keep you going, right? Now, ideally, if you're open to all ways of eating and you have no particular preference, you should. The best way is the way it's available in nature. You rotate your protein seasonally, right? Eggs are for almost everyday use. Red meat can be had as and when you wish and when it is available. There is a certain seasonality for fish. And these are all intuitively built into cultures that eat non-vegetarian. There's a reason why for whole 1 month during Shravan, Maharashtrians don't eat seafood, right? So similarly, so you're best optimized when you rotate and have a large large variety of protein in your diet. Okay. There is a whole lot of misinformation on red meat. Red meat, organ meat are the ones that are actually edible all year long because, like I again said, evolutionarily, we ate ruminant meat. Okay, now ruminants, cow, buffalo, goats, sheep, venison, all of this, right? So, unfortunately, this entire thing that red meat causes heart attack and red meat causes I don't know what all, and I'm sure if you've done some research into nutrition, you've heard of this gentleman called Ansel Keys, who did the 7-country study and very, very popularly came back and said saturated fat is the cause of all cardiovascular. And I think the data was cherry-picked. Now we all know what's happened around it. The reason red meat is vilified is because obviously red meat comes with saturated fat, as would any animal-based food, right? The fat is saturated. Ghee is saturated fat. And that's gotten vilified to a large extent, right? So coming back, having said that, for whatever reason, let's assume you don't eat red meat. No goat meat, no lamb, no pork, no beef. And there are lots, at least in India, beef and pork is really out of bounds. And then there is the other conversation that it's not available. You will still do well with eggs, poultry, dairy, seafood, fish, all of that, right? Historically, from food history wise and nutrition wise, actually, if you look at the pecking order of meat, though chicken is an Indian favorite, chicken stacks the lowest from all the nutrient profile of what poultry is.
Less fat, right?
Plus fat, okay? I mean, you have to choose a chicken wing or a chicken thigh, and everybody leans towards, thanks to the whole fitness culture, everybody leans to bodybuilding and all of that. Now, what I do is I have minimized chicken in my diet. Many reasons. One, that's the factory farming that kind of has been ruined, right? Poultry. We have good sources now, antibiotic free range, all of that. But I have now optimized red meat in my diet, a little bit of seafood in my diet. There is definitely dairy in my diet, and chicken is a little less. So, if you're coming back. So if you don't do red meat, you still have seafood, poultry. If you don't do seafood, your options are again dairy, eggs, chicken. You're still in good stead with nutrition. One, if you cannot eat meat, have eggs. You're still taken care of. That's a superfood, original superfood.
Eggs also would have the highest protein. What the correct term is? This DIAS.
Yeah. The availability, right? No, actually, from a DIS score, yes, eggs is better, in fact, than chicken.
Yeah.
Right. Also, people tend to look at. Please stop looking at egg. The egg white is a protein, and the egg yellow is cholesterol. There is much more to a whole egg than just protein and cholesterol. It's a nutrient loaded food that's cheap. Now somebody will tell me, hey, farmed eggs. Any egg is better than no egg. Any meat is better than no meat. Always.
That's a heavy statement.
Yes.
Yeah, fair. So I'm assuming when you're on a lot of these kind of predominant diets, and if you optimize well, I'm not saying that you take your like how I've done it a couple of times, you have a 4-egg omelette and then you douse it with ketchup that has a decent amount of sugar in it.
Yeah.
The other parts would be to reduce sugar and carbs, which
100%.
is super underrated, right? Because it just sneaks in so many ways that you just don't assume.
Yeah.
How does one? What are the kind of things you want to be careful of that people may not even know how much of carbs or sugar they're consuming?
There is no food that comes out of a box or a packet with a barcode that doesn't have sugar. Let me just put it out there.
In some way or the other.
In some way or the other, sugar, last I checked, had 56 names. Now I'm told there are 72. So you might be seeing something as no added sugar, but it will say something like coconut sugar or wheat-based something, dates, or it will say fortified with, raisins. You're allowed to make, and I think your last podcast with the diabetic chef, I forget his name.
Harsh.
Harsh. That was a lovely podcast. He actually spelled it out, how the laws and the packaging, there is so much leeway in it that you won't even know. Okay. So as your health or your sugar consumption, and I know this is a tough one, your sugar consumption will drastically come down when you first stop gorging on sweets. That is a no-brainer, which is why I'm not even going there. But when you stop eating continuously food that comes out of a packet, I don't care whether it's named a digestive, high fiber, protein bar.
Oh man, for me, protein bars. And,
Okay.
and there are protein bars that you look at which are giving you 18 grams of protein, but they're giving you 350 calories.
Yeah.
It's like a protein is what 1 gram of protein would be
4
4
calories.
4 calories, right?
Yeah, it's the sugar.
18 into 4 is the calories coming out of protein from that bar. Rest is all sugar.
Yes. And
Whatever else
and
you wanna
whatever
say,
you want to call it, right? So you have to first recognize that the minute it has a barcode, you can almost be sure that it'll have some sugar in it or something, or they'll call it natural sugar. Just because it's natural, it's not healthy. Cactus is also natural. So, so that's one. Second, massive misconception in this country that fruit juice is healthy.
I want to talk about this in some unlearnings that I think a lot of people should really think of. And
We'll
juice
come to that.
cleanse is one of them. We'll come to
We'll
that.
come to that. Okay, so that is one. Okay. Second is, so this whole packaged food, my recent tweet was 90% of your grocery store doesn't qualify as food. Just because it is edible, it doesn't become food. That's the truth. Okay. Second thing, a very easy way to recognize where there could be carbs creep and sugar creep is anything that is named low fat. That revolution is decreasing now, but low fat or fortified with. They're all fortified with sugar or some form of sugar, right? So you will consume it. The third thing is know your sources of carbs, right? Now, if you're metabolically healthy, and by that I mean that you're not on the spectrum of metabolic disease, for example, like type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, NAFLD, you can still get away with some rice, roti, potatoes. These are healthy. They may be simple carbohydrates. For such individuals, millets, all of these. But the sweet spot I find in sustainability is when your total carbohydrate intake, especially as an Indian, other cultures have different tolerance levels, 100 to 120 grams of carbs in a day, coming from all sources, you will still be in very good health. Assuming you're not doing a pizza, and I'm not even mentioning those are no-brainers.
Yeah, those you do. To me, if I'm having pizza or if I'm doing a burger, I know exactly what
You
what
want to
I'm
do
doing,
it. Yeah.
and I will do it. There will be a
Correct.
cheat day or cheat days or
Correct.
whatever, but
Correct.
I'm not going to eat a healthy pizza thinking, wow, this is
Yeah. So,
healthy for me.
fun fact, I have never made a cauliflower pizza in my life. Though I was somewhere on the I have been on a keto low carb spectrum, because I found it so ridiculous. The idea that you want to keep recreating junk food versions, I don't know if you'll get this thought process. Junk food versions in some other way, only to fool yourself that you're eating that junk food. I'd rather be aware and go and eat a pizza.
Yeah. On this logic, what is your take on plant-based mock meats? You
That look said it all. It's not food. It's factory sludge. Okay? And how, if I am saying, if we've been discussing how even fruits and vegetables have now been genetically modified, where it's not giving you the kind of nutrition it's supposed to give you, why would you eat something coming out of a factory in a box? And the best way to look at it is just look at the number of ingredients on mock meats. You can't even pronounce a few. You definitely do not recognize 90% of them. They are not food at all. Okay. Now, one more common sense, a common sense you should have. A food that does not historically or originally have a name, why are you eating it? What is Shakahari chicken? What is soya keema? What are all these things?
soya keema is the best.
Yeah, what is that, right? So one, it is not food. Two, it sounds very nice, like I said, plant-based meat, but it is being made in a factory.
But to take this, like again, I will poke holes in everything that I think a hole can be poked in.
Yeah, sure.
The argument being that no, India is a country where protein deficiency is a rampant thing, and something like this will help people consume more protein. I'm assuming a lot of times that's the logic given behind a lot of these kind of products that are now creeping up in India. Is that logic not justified then?
Oh yeah, that it's a profitability motive, garbed under an excuse of care and concern. Okay, if you are if you're concerned about the protein deficiency in India, first educate people or have awareness campaigns. Do you remember in the 80s, Sunday ho ya Monday roz khao ande?
Of course.
Why is that gone? Okay, why is that not there on why don't we see that? Educate people on the importance of protein instead of doing all this sattvic, and I'm sorry, this is going to come out, there might be some comments, but I'm going to say it, this pseudo virtue signaling about vegetarianism, about all of that. Instead, just go to the scientific facts to say which foods are protein, how you need to get your protein, what are the real sources of protein. How about making animal-based foods? By that, I mean dairy. How about having a system or creating a process where that becomes more affordable to everybody in general? And excuse me, mock meats are not cheap.
Mock meats are not cheap. That is true. I was surprised by the price of some of these at a Nature's Basket.
The protein deficient does not lie. They may be in the higher strata of society, but they are not being sold on protein deficiency. They are being sold on, hey, if you eat this, that baby lamb now has a life somewhere, or some rubbish like that, or you're contributing to some stupid climate control, which is there is absolutely no evidence to that. Cow farts are causing methane emissions. No. So it's all the marketing narrative and the agenda is so beautifully garbed, but none of this is cheap. Instead, do something with your produce, or with the animal revolution, or with cows, that it gets affordable and cheaper, where people say, I know some people who say I can't afford paneer every day, which is why I eat tons of rice and dal. And yes, paneer is expensive.
That comment reminded me of Game Changers. Game Changers is this documentary which I'm assuming a lot of people might have seen.
Oh, yes.
Netflix. I was one of those people who saw that and I was like, damn, I'm gonna consider going vegan for some time, generally, to see how it affects my body. But I am that person who'll watch a conspiracy theory video on everything, whether it's the moon landing to anything.
Correct.
And there's one on Game Changers, Food Lies.
Brian Sanders.
And if you've seen Game Changers, you should generally watch this to just have another view on this, right?
Correct.
And one of the things they talk about is in Game Changers, how they talk about gladiators.
Yeah.
And they talk about they figured out somehow that gladiators were on a predominant vegetarian diet. And the debunk of this is that gladiators were slaves and they were on a slave diet. They were not these chiseled, athletic warriors. They were pretty out of shape.
Yes. They were slaves who were made to fight on the cheapest available food for the entertainment of the rich and the powerful. It is only our movies that have made gladiators into these superheroes and warrior gods, and they were not Hulk at all. So that's a very massive misrepresentation. The other thing also I get a lot, I want to say, but Sangeetha, look at our Pehlwans. Yes, I'm looking at your Pehlwans, but they are also on animal-based food, that is dairy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Eggs, so many of them are on eggs.
Yeah, eggs too. But even if they were pure vegetarian and they were in that akhada with that, doing the Hanuman Chalisa and all of that, they are also on lassi and paneer and all of that. And that lifestyle and that body, by the way, they also hold a lot of body fat. If you've seen a Pehlwan, that is suitable only for that profession and that lifestyle. That's not healthy eating that way in the long run. So this is the other thing. Never compare what you have to eat to an athlete's diet, or the diet of Virat Kohli, or the diet of you. You may be a completely different person, or the diet of somebody who's malnourished. Okay, then any food is food. Any food is nutrition, right? So people, I think, lose this little bit of a nuancing that's there around this.
Where are we on juice cleanses?
The worst thing you can do for your gut.
Really?
100%. 100%. So we were discussing the whole anti-nutrients part, right? And most juicing is done of raw fruits and raw vegetables. Okay, now let us divide this into fruits and vegetables, even if you combine it. Okay, fruits have a sugar called fructose. Okay, and it's a very potent sugar. It doesn't spike your insulin. It bypasses that, and it is exclusively metabolized in the liver. Okay, the metabolism of fructose is exactly like that of alcohol. It is basically, your liver will metabolize fructose just as it metabolizes alcohol, minus the buzz and the probability of addiction.
Fructose is used so much in the packaged
Sauces.
food industry.
Yes.
Even in beverages, we've seen a lot of other brands use fructose as their
HFCS also.
Sugar agent.
Yeah.
And the amount of research, and please, you can YouTube or Google your own research here. If you just look at a lot of studies about fructose in the last few years that has come out, fructose, at least on a lot of these studies, seems to be extremely harmful.
Yes, it is.
But it is fruit sugar.
Yeah.
So it must be pretty
And
alright.
natural.
Yeah.
Natural. Okay. So 20 years ago, we never heard of a metabolic condition called non-alcoholic fatty liver, NAFLD. It was called fatty liver, and the only time we knew that it was a fatty liver, everybody assumed that you were binging on alcohol, right? You had an alcohol problem. Last 20 years, the fastest growing, even now in India and globally, the fastest growing metabolic syndrome is NAFLD, all coming from cola, fruit juice, ketchups. It is canned, fresh, all these fruit juices, all of these, right? So people think of fruit juice. So coming back to juicing, the minute you've juiced a fruit, any nutrition or anything that was remaining in that fruit, which is fiber, right? All that is gone. Even when you say, oh no, I'm retaining the pulp of it, but you've destroyed the original form of that fruit, the way in which you would have eaten it, and you're giving yourself so much more fructose. And imagine the delivery of it. Had you eaten a whole apple, the delivery of absorption, the delivery of glucose or fructose into your system, and the absorption would have been slowered thanks to the fiber of the whole fruit versus drinking an apple juice, right? So
No, but
terrible idea.
But fruits, I completely agree. But then that's this whole saying that juice your greens and eat your fruit. But the juicing the greens part is also pretty can be pretty polarizing depending on which school of thought you're at.
You forget that we are human beings and digestion begins in the mouth. I'll go back to little old school thoughts. Is palak juice found in, is spinach juice found in nature as is? Why are you juicing it, right? At least one version of it would be to cook it and make it into a soup, wherein at least you've cooked it. All the fiber in some form is still there, okay? And soups were given at a time when you had no capacity to chew and digest food.
Palak soup really makes me think of hospital.
All soups. Liquid form food is meant for a state of hospitalization when the process of digestion, which begins with your teeth, is somehow impaired, right? Now, you're juicing lauki, palak, you're juicing beetroot. All the anti-nutrients you've concentrated in a glass, which would have reduced over cooking and in the fiber process. Then you usually mix your fruit or your vegetable with something else. You pour maybe some olive oil over it. There are ways to eat food, right? You've ruined it, and you've just invited the amount of gut damage you will do by doing this is not funny. And ask anybody if they admit it. Truly, because I have done it. Every time I have done juicing in my life, and I've done it for 3 months, I have just gone to the crapper multiple times a day. It's just that way.
But the argument there is that even on a
Cleansing.
carnivore diet, you'll do that at least in the beginning phases of a hardcore carnivore diet.
No. Any transition into a diet will cause a disturbance of bowel movement, okay? But that doesn't mean it destroys your gut microbiome.
Fair.
Okay? Yeah. Which is why you cannot have a high carb diet today and say, tomorrow I will do carnivore. People who do that are the ones who face it a lot, right? And then you say, my gut lining is disturbed. And there is a transition process to it where you start reducing the carbs and you start taking protein a little more, and then you probably transition more and more. So every time there is a change in input, the output will change, and that process will take some time to settle, right? It's the same thing with carbohydrate withdrawal, which people have very conveniently called it the keto flu. It's nothing but your dependence on glucose going away.
Yeah, shifting from glucose to
fat. Yeah, and that any transition, for depending upon how addicted or dependent you are to it, is going to be painful. Which is why typically do not go from a high carb diet to a carnivore. Try a low carb, get to a decent medium fat keto diet, then you progress to a carnivore. There are ways to do. It's the same thing with fasting, Anish. I don't know if you faced. People think fasting is a way of eating anything that they want to eat in the feeding period, and then the minute they
4-5 hours have everything possible.
Right? Yeah, everything possible, and then you will say, no, I had massive diarrhea and this is not working. Everything has a process and a transition. I think that's a way to look at it.
Well, this was pretty informative. This is again going to be very polarizing. There are going to be multiple comments thrown on this.
I'm sure.
Uh, could we have your social media handles, please, so people can direct those to you?
No worries. So if you want to know more about me and my story, I created a platform called www.rewriteyourstory.in. Very aptly named because I rewrote my story of health, nutrition, everything in my mid-30s, and I'm 45, turning 46 soon, so it's never too late. I'm most active on Twitter. At the rate SAAIYER is my handle. That's Sangeetha Aiyer for short, but if you type Rewrite Your Story, you'll find me. I'm on Instagram at Sangeetha Aiyer. You'll find me there too. But the best way to reach me, if you want to direct questions at me, I'm on Twitter. And if you want to work with me, feel free to drop an inquiry and we can figure out whether we are suitable for each other in terms of working towards a certain goal. Anish, I always want to end my discussions on animal-based diets with a bit of hope. Okay, the endeavor is not to make anybody feel bad for their choices, whether it is forced, assumed, family, whatever, or personal choice. Some people just taste, even that's a valid reason not to consume certain foods. The endeavor is only to make people aware as to why this kind of eating is better suited for us as human beings. Now, it's not that if you do a vegetarian diet, you can't be healthy. Of course you can. It's not that you can't lift or perform. But you just need to be aware of what you're missing out on, how to then therefore formulate it, and not have funny notions like dal is protein, right? Then this will allow and arm you with the information to say, hey, I am missing out on probably these 3-4 things. Where can I get this? Should I supplement? Should I be testing myself often? Should I be fasting more often? Because my way of eating tends to have little more carbs or volume of food in general. How do I optimize it? That's the endeavor.
Yeah, that's absolutely fair. And I think that's the idea for me as well, right? People should be well informed
Correct.
About their decisions. Ultimately, it's your decision to do whatever you want.
100%.
And that's how it is. Having said that, I always want all sorts of opinions, right? So
Absolutely.
I will also get someone who might come from a game changer's point of view, for example, right?
I'd love to watch that.
So it's always good to get as many opinions. You should figure out your life yourself. Please consult a doctor. Do everything possible before
Correct.
taking advice from anyone, because I think we've also come to a point where you can look up, let's take carnivore diet. You can actually look up why is all potato diet good for me, and you'll get literature on that also.
Absolutely.
So we're in an age where there is so much information, pros and cons on any food or diet thing. You got to make your own decision. Just be informed.
Absolutely.
One thing I would want to leave listeners with is that whatever your regular diets are, just examine the proportion of carbs, protein, fats. I think that itself is a pretty good eye-opener.
Absolutely.
And something that we may not realize on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
Especially your big lunch.
True. Yeah, true. That's true. I think people just get caught up in all of this, that a little bit of awareness as to the plate proportion that itself will make a lot of difference.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Anish, for having me. Pleasure.